Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Let me just wait for you guys to tune in. How's everyone doing? Come on in. Say hi in the comments. Let me know where you're logged in from. If this is your first time, definitely say hi in the comment and let me know where you're logged in from so I can say hi and give you a shout out. Hi, YouTube. Hi, Facebook. Hi, Instagram. It's like it's 10 a.m. today, but I feel like I've done so much already today. Good morning, Atriel on Instagram. Okay, let me introduce myself. My name is 𝐂𝐡𝐚𝐭𝐬𝐀𝐩𝐸. I'm an immigration attorney and I represent clients all over the United States with their immigration matter. My office is in Atlanta, Georgia. You can reach me at 407-995-6567. You can also send a WhatsApp to 404-333-8751. But your location doesn't matter. We have clients all over the United States, so that does not matter. Okay, I see some. Hi from California. That's super early. It's like 7 o'clock in California right now. That's Ms. Zeph. Okay, so today I want to talk about police report requirements, for VAWA self-petitions. So before I get into the requirement, let me just quickly give you guys a rundown again what VAWA is. VAWA is Violence Against Women's Act. It's basically a rule or a relief that allows both male and female victims of abuse of some sort, whether that's, physical, financial, sexual, verbal, emotional, in their marital relationship to be able to self-petition and get a 10-year green card on their own. This also helps children whose parents are U.S. citizen or green card holders who are where the children are being abused by those parents. And it also helps parents whose children are 21 years or older and are U.S. citizens and are abusive. So I wanted to come and talk about, good morning, Novelette, how are you? I wanted to specifically talk about this police report because, in the last 2 weeks, I've had two people who basically were like, their cases, they went to maybe a different lawyer or a different person. And, they said basically they could not take their cases because they did not have a police report. And so there was no way that they were going to be able to prove, that they had some sort of abuse happening in their relationship. So I'm here to say that, one, a police report is not a requirement. It is absolutely not a requirement for a VAWA self-petition. So think about this. A lot of abuse that happens, a lot of times are not physical. Now, if your spouse was physically abusive to you, it makes sense, right? That, you call the cops or whatever the case may be. Sometimes you may not call the cops because of your status and because you're scared that something could happen. If you call the cops, or it might be you who ends up getting arrested because of your status. But then there are also so many forms of abuse that happen that you cannot have a police report for. If you see that your spouse is always gaslighting you, making you think you're crazy, telling you all these things that cause you depression or anxiety, who are you going to report to? What are you going to call the cops? You're going to tell the cops, my husband is making me depressed, my wife is making me depressed, go arrest him. So do you understand what I'm saying? So in situations like that, you're not going to have a police report. You're not going to have a police report when there's mental abuse going on or psychological abuse going on, even verbal abuse, because what are the cops going to do? Okay, he cursed you out, then, or whatever it is, it's a marital or domestic problem. So many times there is no police report. So please, if you qualify to self-petition, do not allow not having a police report stop you from filing, because there are many ways in which you can show evidence of things that happen, and we'll talk about those in a second. Another area that I want to just talk about specifically is sexual abuse, right? And sexual abuse happens in many ways. It's not just that you experience marital rape or, or whatever it is. It could also be that your spouse is putting you at the risk, right, of getting an STD because you're going around sleeping with a bunch of women, or vice versa, a bunch of men, right? That is a form of sexual abuse and something that could affect you physically. So in those instances, that type of physical abuse, how do you report it? Oh, police officer, oh my gosh, my text message is going off the chain today. I apologize, guys. I don't even know how to mute this stuff. Like, they are like on it today. Let me try to mute this. Hopefully you guys can hear me. Where's the mute button? If you guys can hear me, comment in the box and let me know you can still hear me, just so that I can turn off all the text messages coming to me. Let me know in the comment, please, if you can hear me so I can continue. As I was saying, so like in that instance, there's not going to be a police report, but there's some form of physical abuse, right? Okay, you can hear me, great. Because think about it. If your spouse is sleeping around, right, and you get an STI, I don't know, gonorrhea or something like that, so even though there's sexual abuse, there is physical abuse because he is giving you something physical that is affecting your health, right? Because again, physical abuse is not just, oh, my spouse slapped me or punched me or threw a bottle at me or threw a shoe at me. Physical abuse could be putting your health in danger. Physical abuse could be, depriving you of food and basic necessities to survive. Physical abuse could be locking you up in the house and saying, you do not leave the house because, you don't have the keys. If lock the door and taking the keys, so you won't leave because, so in that instance of this locking house, so you see how you can have control, abuse that's based on control, but also abuse that's physical because you literally cannot move, or you have a spouse that's physically aggressive with you and stops you from going to a doctor because they don't want to get in trouble. So that's like another form of physical abuse. So what the whole goal of what I'm basically trying to tell you guys is that, a police report is great if you're able to get one. But here's the thing, not everybody is going to experience the kind of physical abuse that requires a police report, okay? And also, even if you experience the kind of physical abuse that warrants a police report, there are many immigrants who are terrified of going to the police because, one, they've been threatened by their spouse. With a police situation, there's no anonymity. You know that your spouse is going to know that you're the one who reported. If you're scared that your spouse is dangerous, there's no incentive for you to do that. So please, 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 guys, if you qualify for this, don't let that be what stops you from getting your green card and getting yourself out of that toxic, relationship. Okay. All right. I know I see some questions coming in. Let me try and catch some of them. So Preshnella says, do you need an interview after getting your VAWA approval? Many VAWA cases, first of all, when you apply for VAWA, the VAWA portion, they make a decision without an interview. What they interview you for is the green card. So once you're approved for VAWA, that is when you're scheduled for a green card interview if you put in the adjustment of status simultaneously. If you didn't put the adjustment of status simultaneously and there's nothing stopping you from putting it in, if you get VAWA approved, then putting your application for adjustment of status, typically you will get interviewed for that. Sometimes we will see a bypass, right? I will even tell you, recently we've seen even an interview like this literally maybe happens once in like 10 years. So don't take this to the bank that this is going to happen. Like we've even seen marriage cases with just so much bona fide, so much slam dunk, like there's absolutely no questions that these people are married, but it is very, very rare. It's like a unicorn. But generally, there are more people that get interviewed for VAWA after they get approved, to approve you for I-485 than not, but there's also a possibility that your interview could be waived. Novelette asked a good question. She said, what does it mean when it says fee waived in a VAWA case? What that means is that your I-360, there is no fee when you're submitting a VAWA petition. So here's the thing. A lot of forms can be used for different things. Like, for instance, a 485 can be used if you're filing a family-based petition. It can be used if you're filing an employment-based, green card petition. The same thing with an I-360. You can use the I-360 if you're submitting a VAWA petition. You can use it if you're submitting a widower petition. With VAWA, though, they waive the fee when you're submitting an I-360. So if it says fee waived, it means that your 360 was waived. It doesn't mean that your I-485 is waived, because they're not waiving that. But with the 360, as long as it's VAWA, there's no fee. If you're submitting an I-485, there is a fee, unless you request a fee waiver and you're approved. Now, that is also another unicorn. Can it happen? Yes. But most times they deny people's fee waiver. So if you're able to pay your filing fee, pay your filing fee instead of dragging it out and waiting for something that may never get approved. Okay. Okay, let's see. Someone says, answer me, but I can't see your question. So I don't know what your question is. Let me just go up and see if I can find these questions. Because the thing is, when you guys type your questions, you type them in like several different lines, but as you're doing that, other people are logging in, so your question disappears. So you gotta either put it in the question box and type it all out so I can see it. Hi, Crystal. Crystal says, I filed for VAWA. This is Crystal on Instagram. And it was accepted. I did my biometrics. What's next? What's next depends on what you submitted with your application. If you submitted an adjustment of status with it, the next thing, regardless of whether you submit an adjustment of status or not, is you'll get a prima facie determination letter if you meet the preliminary requirements. And then after that, with the adjustment of status, you usually will get your work permit and travel permit. And usually after that, we don't want to see anything else until they approve your case. However, that would be in a perfect world. But for some people, you might get a request for additional evidence, depending on, what you submitted or if they needed more information. And then once you submit your response to that request for additional evidence, then they make a decision on your case. So the timeline is usually about 2 years to 2.5 years for most VAWA decisions. But generally, once you have your work permit and travel permit, if you have a pretty slam dunk case and not else going on, you basically be in a waiting period. And that is why, because, right now with USCIS and everything being delayed, that's why now, instead of the 1 year work permits and travel permits, they're giving the 2 years. Okay. Let me see what other questions I have here. So this Nars2784. I don't know if you're being funny, but this is not a dating website. He says, do you have single women in the States ready for a serious relationship? Please. We're not a dating service. We don't match people. You can go find somebody elsewhere. We're an immigration law firm. We help people after they've been matched to get their green card, but we don't help you find a spouse. Okay. Hi, Blue Trillions. Thank you so much. Nene says she would like to call me. You can call 407-995-6567. You can also send a WhatsApp 404-333-8751. My number is also in my profile on Instagram. It's scrolling through the ticker on Facebook and YouTube. Again, it's also in the profile. You can also just Google us, and our numbers are also listed on there. Okay. We don't handle Canadian visas, so I can't answer any questions on Canada. Let's see. Okay, so somebody is asking, can you file for VAWA if you live abroad? Your spouse is a U.S. citizen, but came where you live and abused you. There's certain things that you would need to satisfy to be able to do that. One of which, if, for instance, your spouse was a U.S. citizen and your spouse was in the U.S. military, any of the U.S. military. If your spouse was in the U.S. military, for instance, and you guys like moved to Germany, you're not in the United States, But in that case, you're eligible to submit a VAWA petition. For you, if you've never been to the United States and lived with your spouse in the United States, you will not be eligible. Your spouse, you need to have lived with your spouse at some point here in the United States in order for you to be eligible, even though, let's say, you move back and stuff like that. So those things need to happen, either the military, U.S. military, government, U.S. government, or the other one that I mentioned. Okay. Preshnella, I think I've answered your question. So I'm going to skip that one. 𝐂𝐀𝐋𝐿, yes, I personally, if you want to speak to me personally, I am in the Atlanta office. So even if you call, you would have to come to the Atlanta office, or you would have to do a Zoom video. Doesn't matter. Zoom video, you still see my face, so we can do the consult on Zoom video if you wanted to, or you could do a phone consult. But I am sitting in Atlanta, so that's why I'm not in Orlando office. Okay? Or you can meet with one of my other associate attorneys as well. Nini says, ma'am, how do I know if I'm qualified to file for VAWA? The best way is to schedule a consultation, meet with me, and I will evaluate your case and tell you what your odds are. Okay? Dintley is asking a very good question. She says, can your case be denied for VAWA if you're not yet divorced with the abuser when your interview comes up? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Your case, a lot of people stay with their abusers even after they get their green card, and their spouses just don't know they have their green card. And then also for a lot of people, they want to get their green card before they leave the relationship, because that's what gives them the courage to leave, because i.e. they're afraid that how are they going to work or where are they going to live because of their status. So you're not penalized at all for living with your abuser. The only time that living with the abuser will disrupt you from getting a benefit is if, and this is state specific, but it makes sense that majority of the states will do this, that basically if you submit a VAWA claim and you get a prima facie determination letter, and basically you're trying to seek public benefits like housing, for example, they're not going to house you with your abuser, because if you're being abused, that's why you're seeking housing, to get out of that situation. So in situations like that, they want to know that you have left the home of your abuser to be able to do that. Like New York is one of those states, for instance, that their laws are very clear on that. I want to say majority of the states are like that, but obviously there are 50 states. I'm smart, but not that smart to remember what all the states' rules are. So depending on your state, the laws change. But no, if you live with your abuser, that's fine. And then if you live with your abuser and you're worried about getting your U.S. mails and stuff like that, you want to make sure that you're using your attorney's office as a safe address. If you're one of those people who did this to yourselves, then make sure you have a safe address that's not your home, because sometimes you might have a spouse that loses it, because this is also for safety, for your own safety as well. Where not only are you worried about your safety, you want to make sure if you have a spouse that gets the documents and seizes them or rips them to shred. We've had clients where their spouses literally rip their EADs, rip their passports, rip their visas. So this happens. So you want to make sure that you have a safe address, okay? Andrew Lopez says T visa. What question are you asking me about specifically? Philip says, asking for a friend, what if you don't get a prima facie after you submitted your VAWA case but got work permit? Is that a problem? Well, typically you need a prima facie to get approved, because the prima facie is showing that you've met the bare minimum. Some people's prima facie may come earlier than others. Some people might need a request for additional evidence before they can give them the prima facie. So without knowing what's in your friend's file or what he submitted, we'll need to see it. Again, some people's come later, so I don't know again when your friend submitted, how long ago it was. So all those things, come into play. Okay. Big Sean says, do you do an interview when you find I-751 for self-petition? Generally, so what he's talking about is not, so an I-751 is typically what you file when you have a 2-year conditional green card. And normally you file it jointly with your spouse to remove the conditions in your green card. But sometimes you have to do a self petition, i.e. because you and your spouse are divorced or you're in an abusive marriage. Generally, if you're self-petitioning, those are the ones that generally sometimes would require an interview. We have had several clients be bypassed for an interview. But, I don't want that to make you or anyone else here feel, oh my gosh, why wasn't mine bypassed? Because we've gone to several too with the interviews and they were approved. It just depends on the officer, what they have, on the table. They may want to just hear more from you, understand your story a little better. The most important thing is whichever option it is, just go and tell the truth and do your best and then remove the condition. So to answer your question is that it just depends on the officer. Sometimes they do give an interview. Sometimes they don't. Iana, Lynn Naila asks, how long after marriage can someone file for VAWA? We've been together for 5 years, lived together for 1 year, and now married for a month. So this is a very good question, actually. So before 2022, I want to say before February of 2022, you had to show cohabitation, that you and your spouse live together after marriage. Now, they don't care whether it's before marriage you live together or whether it's after marriage. So they'll be looking at the totality of your 5-year relationship, which works to your benefit, because a lot of times some people were abused even before they entered the marriage. And, with the expectancy that it would stop, but it never really did. So in your case, even though you've lived together for 1 month, you can still file for a self-petition if you qualify. I would definitely love to evaluate you just to make sure that you meet the requirements. So you can call 407-995-6567 to schedule a consult. Okay. Aziz Alawi says, good morning, Mara. Can I appeal VAWA case if it's denied? It's appealable, but we have to know why it was denied, because you can't just appeal because you feel like appealing. You have to have a reason to appeal. One, that there's new evidence that you never submitted in the first place, that you want USCIS to, reopen and look at these evidence, or, basically you don't agree with USCIS's decision based on what it is that they denied, and you're asking the appeals to reconsider this so that they can, move on and make a decision. So you can definitely appeal, but before you appeal, you definitely want to speak to an attorney, let them study and understand why you were denied, to make sure that you have grounds to appeal. Okay? Nikaya says, does going in the abuse shelter help a VAWA case at all? Hence, since you've already submitted your case, absolutely. Going into a domestic shelter, whether you submit, so here's the thing, these cases are ongoing. Until they make a decision in your case, everything is ongoing. What I mean by that is, as new evidence arises, depending on what the evidence is, I'll speak for myself and my firm. Depending on what the evidence is, we would usually put it in our back pockets. If there's new stuff that develops after a client has submitted. So like, for instance, if I know that I have a slam dunk case and I get new evidence, I'll just hold it in my pocket, just so that if they ever come back with some stuff, it's like, here you go, here's more. Sometimes I have a case and like, and now we have like the smoking gun. And once we have that, we will amend and add it to their case. So yeah, anything that comes up, or any continuation of the abuse after you've submitted, you definitely want to keep it. You definitely want to document those things because those can always be used as your case continues. Okay. All right, guys. I have 2 minutes. Hi, El Boogie. Why are you calling me Attorney Aisha? That's one of my friends. Okay. So Precious says I filed to remove the conditions of my green card through VAWA. You mean through abuse? It's been 2 years and 9 months since I had my 2-year green card. What should determine if I should file for citizenship? So technically, you could put in your application now, because normally if you're filing for removal of conditions based on an abusive spouse, you're eligible for citizenship 3 years later, and then you count 9 months to like 2 years and 9 months. So 90 days before the 3-year mark, you can submit your application. So, but you also have to show that you've been married to your spouse for at least 3 years. In that instance, when people do that, I always say this: you better make sure you have a really good abuse case, to submit that, because if not, you're just going to be wasting your time and getting into denial. So you really need to have a really solid abuse conditional removal case. Okay. How can you determine if your affidavit of support is qualified? We've got to notice that the form was incomplete. Well, apart from filling the form, and the I-864 for a marriage-based case is one of the most is the largest reason why people are denied. It's the largest reason why people are denied for their cases. So if you are doing it, that's not something to play around with, because the I-864 is a bit complex. Understanding the tax returns, understanding how to calculate based on family size, understanding what number in the tax return they use versus your W-2 number, understanding whether you have to do an IRS tax transcript versus a W-2 and a 1040. So it's something that I never suggest that a client should try to do themselves, especially if you've been denied for it or you've received a request for additional evidence. It's best to speak with an attorney who understands that process to go through it with you, because there's no one answer fits all, because we have to evaluate your family size to be able to say what the amount is. Okay. All right, guys. I gotta jump off, but it was nice chatting with you guys. I'll be online on Friday. If you would like to schedule a call with me or one of my associate attorneys, you can call 407-995-6567. You can also send a WhatsApp to 404-333-8751. All right, guys, have a wonderful Tuesday. Bye.